Hey guys, welcome back to Resonant Function. My name is Jacob Brownlow and I'm a holistic health practitioner, and I work with all kinds of people, from everyday people all the way to professional athletes. And my goal is to help people live the most high frequency life that they can possibly live. And we're going to dive into a little bit of that today, what it means to live a high frequency life and how you can do that, because it's not a difficult process. You don't have to be special to live a high frequency life. You don't need to be gifted. It's something that's actually available to everybody in this moment right now, which I think is a very exciting thing. And if we're able to live the most high energy, high frequency life, then we're able to bring our gifts into this world, into the garden that is this world, because that is one of my core beliefs, that everybody has something to bring here. But we can't do that if we're not living at a high frequency, if we're not living life with high amounts of energy. Now, I'm a CHEK practitioner, so a lot of the work that I do with people is around corrective exercise, orthopedic rehabilitation, helping people in places that our current health system can't help. Because we've got to be honest, the current health system isn't a health system, it's a disease management system. You have an issue, you have an injury, you have an illness, you have a symptom, and instead of diving into the root causes of those things and starting to find the reasons as to why they're happening, we just numb them. We numb them with painkillers, we numb them with medications, we numb them with procedures, and we continue to not listen. We continue to not listen and not listen and not listen, and then we get a large enough message from the universe, which oftentimes for people comes as a crisis. And I've had those crises on my own journey. I had heart surgery when I was 21, and I certainly wouldn't have that now, knowing the things that I know. But you can only do your best with the information that you have at the time. And it doesn't mean that necessarily I wouldn't have done that, but there are things that I would have done on the path before going through heart surgery, which is a relatively significant thing. So what I look at in my work when I work with people is getting to the root cause. And to use myself as an example there, that whole process looked like, going to doctors and going, why is my heart racing all the time? Because I was getting these palpitations that were continuing for quite a long period of time. Enough to be concerning. It dawned on me at one point. I remember they were happening to me in school, and I thought, man, fucking hell. Okay, you probably shouldn't be feeling my heart like this while I'm in class. And that prompted me to go down the path and speaking to doctors and speaking to orthopedic surgeons and a heart specialist and a heart surgeon and all these different things. And not once did somebody ask me or assess my breathing pattern. Once did somebody ask me about my sleep or the quality of my sleep, the water that I was drinking, the food that I was eating and bringing into my body every single day. They didn't dive into, at any great length, the stress that I was under at that time. And that doesn't mean I was living a life from my point of view that was like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. But if you start to look at the grand sum of stress that are in people's life, like at that time, I played football and I was pursuing a professional football career at that time. And I was traveling to Sydney 4 times a week. On the Friday, I'd get up at 3:30 in the morning and drive to North Shore. And then I'd get back and I went to a football school. So I trained there, and then I'd have the whole day. And then I would do my own training in the evening. And that was just one of these days. I was training every single day at that time. When I would rock up to sessions, I'd be so knackered. And I would put myself under so much pressure to be able to perform and try and make a team and get to a certain external outcome. And I'd rock up to these training sessions just completely shattered, zero energy. And I would have a Red Bull. I'd go to 7-Eleven, I'd get a Red Bull, and I would have a double shot espresso. And I was having this at 6:30, 7 p.m. before training, and then driving home, getting back at around 11:30 at night, and then eating, and then probably sometimes going to bed at 1 in the morning. And doing all of these things, not eating an organic diet, not eating terribly, but still eating processed foods, drinking tap water, not understanding the effects of blue light, not understanding the importance of sunlight. My grandfather, when I was a lot younger, passed away with melanoma. So I had a massive, massive fear of the sun. Anybody who knows me from that time, I used to just eat sunscreen. I was pale as a ghost. But all of these little elements and foundations that I've touched on are things that, honestly, most medical experts that are just practicing generally within the field now would laugh at and would consider them not to be important. They wouldn't consider those things to be important. And when I was living in that state, I wasn't living my highest frequency life. Knowing what I know now, I look at that time and I was doing a lot of things out of fear and obligation, not out of love and opportunity. And that very quickly dives into a deeper level. But from my experience of working with people now and helping people rehabilitate themselves from disc bulges, which is often a thing that, orthopedic surgeons say that people need to get a surgery for, before they get a proper assessment done. Helped people heal from ACL tears and pains that really the conventional approach has not been able to find. And it's not that I'm some genius. I put all of that. I'm a Czech practitioner who've studied in a lot of different areas, and you stand on the shoulders of the people that have come before you, and their work really works. But the work that I do with people is not groundbreaking. It's not like they have to reinvent the wheel. We're just looking at holistic foundations of health. So if I take an example of somebody coming in with an ACL injury, and they're an athlete, right? They're an athlete, and there's a lot that goes into that. If we look at the ACL is a passive structure in the body, and it has a tensile strength that's greater than steel. So even if you're 90 kilos, when you run, it can be up to 8 to 12 times body weight going through those systems, which is still not enough force to be able to damage those structures. And a lot of those ACL injuries are done non-contact. They're done non-contact. And the conventional approach, you'll go and get a surgery. You might go get some rehabilitation that'll strengthen the knee, that'll strengthen the quad, the VMO, that'll maybe look at the hamstring, but they don't ask the fundamental questions as to why those things happened. If you are constantly exposing yourself to artificial blue light, you are going to increase your cortisol exposure. Chronic cortisol exposure leads to higher cortisol. Cortisol degrades connective tissue, which can break down those passive structures over time. You may be eating a diet that irritates your gut. And if you're eating a diet that irritates the digestive viscera, the digestive organs, well, then those organs need to expand because they become inflamed. And what the body does is shuts down core function. Because if it shuts down core function, that organ has the room to expand. Because if your organ shuts down because there's too much pressure on it, you die, right? Your body can survive without the core. But when our core is inhibited, when our deep stabilizers are inhibited, we can't effectively stabilize the spine. And if we can't stabilize the spine, we can't stabilize the lower extremity. So now you're eating a diet that doesn't help you, it shuts down the core, you're putting more stress on the passive structures, you're breaking them down every movement you make. You're exposing yourself to artificial blue light. You're boosting your cortisol, which will degrade connective tissue over time. You are putting stress on the liver by eating a non-organic diet. Your body has to process these things. Once again, the liver's inflamed, it'll shut down the core. You might have a breathing pattern disorder. Average person takes 24,900 breaths a day, and each one of those breaths are a signal to the nervous system. So are you signaling to yourself that you're in a rest and digest and repair state? Are you signaling to yourself that you are in a fight or flight state? Which is an issue if you have a breathing pattern disorder throughout the day when you're at rest, because now you're telling yourself you're in a stress mode all the time. That'll boost cortisol again. That'll degrade connective tissues. So we're starting to piece together all of these different things that aren't necessarily at the knee, but play a major role in people's breakdown. And that's just the stuff that is not looked at in the medical system, because it's far more profitable to give somebody a surgery. It's far more profitable to get people onto pharmaceuticals, get people onto painkillers. That's just our standard approach now. That's just our standard approach. And if you're injured, right, let's say a disc bulge, let's use another example. If you're a mum that's hurt her lower back, right, those people will come to me to help them with their injury, and we'll work through an exercise program, and we'll look at things holistically. We'll look at their diet, we'll look at what's happening in their lifestyle. And they're thinking, okay, I'm just coming to get an exercise program. I'm just coming to work on those things. But that stuff for me is honestly a little bit of a Trojan horse to get to the deeper level of things with them and start to investigate if they are living their highest frequency life. Because an injury and dysfunction and breakdown isn't high frequency. It's not high vibration. It can't be, because if you're injured and you're in some form of chronic pain, that robs you of your presence. Anybody who's been in pain, right, knows that there's nothing else to focus on apart from the pain. Everybody has 1,000 problems until you have a health problem, and then you only have one. And if you're in a form of chronic pain, you can't be present with the people around you. If you're a mum and your back hurts all the time, right, because nobody's properly rehabilitated you or showed you how to rehabilitate yourself after childbirth, which is another topic in itself that we'll cover on in another podcast, in another video. And if you haven't rehabilitated yourself properly and your back hurts, and now your kids are there, and your kids just want to play with you. They just want love. They just want to be there with their mum. But let's be real, I also used to work at a sports college, and I worked with really young kids for a long time, and I love them. But also, little kids can be pretty fucking annoying, right? Like, your kids can annoy you. I don't think anybody would disagree with that statement, that your own children can annoy you. But when they're annoying you and you're in a form of chronic pain, that then makes it way more difficult to deal with. You are far less likely to be present and caring and loving for that child's needs in those moments. You're more likely just going to be pissed off. You're going to be heightened, you're going to be tired, you're going to be irritated, and that's the version of yourself that your children are going to get. That's the version of yourself that people are going to get in your interactions throughout your day-to-day life. And when those interactions change, and they change for the worse, well then we don't live a life that's in accordance with our higher self. We're not living a life led by love. We're living a life led out of pain, out of fear, out of dysfunction. It's a low vibration life, and it steals us from our presence. So people come in and think, okay, I'm going to get out of pain and we're going to work on these things. We're going to get an exercise program, but really helping them to live their highest frequency life. If you change your diet and you stop eating these pesticides, fungicides, rodenticides, all these chemically and hormonally based sprays that we put on our food through commercial farming practices, when we get away from eating those and we heal the gut, well, then we start to reduce the overall level of stress on our body and on our nervous system. So we're increasing our ability to heal, we're increasing our level of vitality, right? And if we start to look at the water we drink, we get away from water. Particularly in Australia, there's a great documentary called Firewater. It talks about what they do with the water here, and it's quite mental. I might put that down in the show notes. But you're drinking water with fluoride, you're drinking water with these heavy metals, these pathogens, all these things that come from standard water supplies if you're just drinking tap water. Your body's having to detoxify from those things, which is another stressor in the bucket. You might have a breathing pattern disorder, as you mentioned, so the stress goes higher again. All of these things sensitize you to pain, and they pull you out of your center. They pull you out of your center. They pull you out of your alignment. Because those little annoying things, the challenges become more challenging. They become more challenging and they become harder to deal with. So if you want to become present, what are the things that we focus on? What are the simple things that I use with people to help them bring them back into alignment to live their most present life. And these are the things that I learned from Paul Chek. Paul Chek's works changed my life. He's unreal. One of the greatest physical therapists probably to have ever lived. A lot of the content that he puts out now, maybe some people won't align with in the sense because he's in a different stage of life, and that may be more woo-woo for people who talks about the soul and spirit and God and all these different things. But people forget just how great of a physical therapist and movement practitioner and body worker that Paul Chek is. But Paul Chek studied Hippocrates. He's got a book, How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy. That is basically the Bible for health. It is phenomenal. But he talks about the 4 doctors: Dr. Quiet, Dr. Diet, Dr. Movement, Dr. Happiness. And he talks about the 6 foundation health principles, which are sleep, nutrition, hydration, thinking, breathing, and movement. And when you have that framework to look at your own life through, you can take responsibility for your own health. You can take responsibility for your own health. So if my lower back hurts and I look at the 4 doctors, Dr. Quiet, the lumbar spine, most common lower back injuries is a L5-S1 disc bulge. L5-S1 disc bulge is the first chakra. First chakra energetically is connected to safety, security, tribal association. So we come to Dr. Quiet. Am I worried about finances? Am I worried about getting things done on time all the time? Because if I don't, potentially the position at my job is at risk. Am I worried about where the next meal is going to come from? Cost of living is through the roof at the moment for people. Those things start to upregulate the stress and the grand total of stress that's on our body. Am I, Dr. Quiet, am I getting enough time for reflection and introspection? Do I have time for just me, or am I flat out in the thinking mind, go, go, go all the time? And if the answer is yes to that, well, then I can use the lens of Dr. Quiet to be able to bring myself back into center. And these things aren't complex. They're not easy, but they're not complex. So I know that, okay, my back's been killing me at the moment and I've been flat out. So I need to create moments to rest. I need to prioritize rest for myself. I'm going to get out in nature. I'm going to sit by the beach. I'm going to bring myself back to center. So that's Dr. Quiet. Dr. Diet. Am I eating a processed diet? Am I eating commercially farmed foods and produce? Am I eating a non-organic diet that's full of these pesticides, fungicides, rodenticides that, once again, as we spoke about before, our body has to detoxify from all the time? If you're not eating organic food, you don't have the highest level of nutrient content. And there's a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price. I have it on the table over there. And he found that these non-organic diets, these modern processed diets, don't contain the full nutrient and mineral content that we need. And particularly the mineral content, if we don't have that, we will steal those things from our body, which typically for people is their teeth and their bones. And how many dental issues do we have in the world right now? How many instances, how many older people have bone issues, right? That really honestly aren't really that old. But if my back hurts, if my disc hurts, the discs are made out of collagen. And if I'm not eating a diet that's giving me enough raw materials to heal my body, especially when my stress load is so high and I'm breaking that down all the time, if I don't have the raw materials to be able to counteract that breakdown and repair those tissues, well then of course my back's going to hurt. So what can I do? I can eat a whole food diet. I can eat organically. I can make sure that I'm giving my body the raw materials it needs to eat. I can look into eating right for my metabolic type. I can look at healing my gut. There's so many things you can do. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect at them, but you could do things right now to improve your situation. And you don't need to outsource your responsibility to someone else. You just have to be willing to take on the work. What did Hippocrates say? If you want somebody to heal, you must first ask them if they're willing to forego the things that made them sick. If somebody wants to heal, you must first ask them if they're willing to forego the things that made them sick. And if you're ready to take that responsibility on, then you can start to manage yourself along that journey. So we've got Dr. Diet. We've got Dr. Movement. If you've got back pain, are you sitting down at your desk all day? Is your posture terrible? Do you have this massive rounded upper back? Are your shoulders forward? Is your head coming forward? What happens in the cervical spine is reflected in the lumbar spine. If the head's forward, that's going to cause a compensation down at that lower back. It just puts more load on those structures. And if there's more load on those structures, there's more breakdown. And if your total stress load is so high that you're in constant breakdown and you can't repair, well then if you're going to build up waste product, you're going to reduce your ability to heal, you're going to cause damage to those tissues, you're going to cause inflammation, and that's going to increase your susceptibility to feeling pain. Okay, so Dr. Movement, is your posture poor? Are you moving enough? The discs of the lumbar, of the whole spine and the entire body, but the discs in the spine don't have a direct blood supply. They get hydrated through movement. So they remove waste product, they bring in nutrition, blood flow, water and oxygen through a process called imbibition, which is the twisting and the pumping. So are you getting the right amount of movement? Are you firing the core properly? Are you using the inner unit stabilizers? All of these things that you can start to look at from a movement perspective. And Dr. Happiness, are you doing things in your life that actually make you happy, or are you doing things for an outcome? Are you constantly connected to obligation? How many people are running through this life? And I've recently caught myself in that trap at the moment as well. I love what I do, but sometimes I get caught in obligation, and that's actually created by me, and I have the choice. So if it's something that I don't like, that's not anybody else's fault, I'm not a victim to any of that. I created that, and if I created that, I can change that. So are you doing things in your life that genuinely bring you happiness? Are you doing things in your life for no outcome? Are you playing? When was the last time that you played? If you're an adult, when was the last time that you played? Genuinely, ask yourself that question. Do you feel uncomfortable about playing? Explore that. Do things that make you happy. Do things that make you happy. And when you look at that 4-doctor framework, you can't argue with me that there isn't something in that 4-doctor framework that you could look at if you're a person with chronic pain, that if you looked at through an open and honest lens, you could tweak and change things through that lens that would make you better. And I'm not saying or guaranteeing that they're going to be a magic fix for you, but if you looked at Dr. Quiet, Dr. Diet, Dr. Movement, Dr. Happiness, if you don't get enough quiet time for yourself, if you're flat out all the time, if you eat a processed inorganic diet, even if you're eating whole foods, even if they're commercially farmed, you're still going to have to detoxify from those pesticides, fungicides, rodenticides, all these things that are sprayed on the food. If you're not getting enough movement, you're sitting down at your desk all day, and you don't really do things that make you happy. Sitting down and watching the footy and smashing beers on the weekend to escape a life that you hate is not happiness. And honestly, I know a lot of people that fit that criteria. Like that's not necessarily a terrible life for people, but a lot of people are living that way. And you can't tell me that looking through that 4-doctor framework, there aren't things that you could do that if you did them would just make your life better. It's not to say they're going to be a magic fix, but if you did all those things, what I could guarantee is that you would feel better. You would have a better life. And if you would have a better life, there's a less likelihood that you would be in pain, that you would have an injury, that you'd have dysfunction. Drastically decreases the likelihood of that. And then we look at the 6 foundation health principles: our sleep, nutrition, hydration, thinking, breathing, and movement. And if we look at life through that lens, things change, and we can start to manage our own health. We can start to take the responsibility for our own health and stop outsourcing all the time. Doesn't mean that you can't search for better information. But we shouldn't be searching for information and not listening. Diet is a great example of that. How many vegans do you know have those baggy eyes? All right, they got dark circles under their eyes because they're not getting enough nutrients. They're fucking tired. That is clearly a diet that isn't working for them. But because they're connected to a concept or an idea external to them of it being the right idea or the right thing to do, they would listen to that over listening to their own body. They're like, man, fucking hell, I've got so many digestive issues and I'm tired all the time, but this diet is the best thing ever. And that's the same for everything. Same for keto, that's the same for paleo, same for carnivore, or like whatever you want to do. How many ideas or concepts are people attaching themselves to, not getting a good outcome, and then not listening and just continuing to go down with that? Like trusting their doctor, taking medication, getting 20 different side effects and going, man, my doctor's a smart guy, he's all over it. They're all over it, it's really helping me at the moment. Where actually you've got more things wrong with you than what you did before you started taking that medication. Which is a really crazy thing. You can start to look at those 6 foundation health principles and become your own doctor, become your own custodian of your own health, and really begin to manage your own life and energy and vitality. Because when you do those things, you boost your energy, your life force, your vitality. You start to live a more present, higher frequency life. You can't live a high frequency life. You can't be present when you're in chronic pain. You can't be present when you're in chronic pain. When you're injured, when your back hurts all the time, when your shoulder hurts all the time, when you feel pain every single day to some varying degree, that robs you of your presence, it robs you of your frequency, it robs you from living a high frequency life. And when you start to look at these things and change them and shift them, changes how you feel in your body, and that changes how you feel in your mind. Said, as above, so below, as below, so above. The mind reflects the body and the body reflects the mind. So when you change what happens in the body, you change the way you see the world, you change the way that you think. If you change the way you see the world and you change the way that you think, you fundamentally have a different life. You fundamentally have a different life. And if I can do anything on this journey, it's connecting people back to themselves and doing those things. Through the time that people work with me, you know, if they get out of pain, amazing, phenomenal. But if I can connect them back to the listening that is always within themselves, if I can connect them to that, I've done my job as far as I'm concerned. And that's what I love. That's what I love about this work. And that's what I love to have the opportunity to do, to bring into the world. So I hope there was something in there that you could grab onto, something that resonated. If it doesn't, what does Ram Dass say? Just let it go through you like good Indian food very quickly. But look at your foundations. Look at your 4 doctors. Look at your 6 foundation health principles, and you'll begin to be able to manage your own life, manage your own energy, manage your foundations, manage your frequency. Because when you're living that high frequency life, you fundamentally see the world different and things start to shift and change for you. Opportunities will begin to arise that you didn't even know were possible. But we can't do that if we're not managing our foundations and we're living that low vibration life. So look at your foundations, become your own doctor, take responsibility for your own health, and live that high frequency life.